I have known about Commonwealth for a long time, and as a matter of fact, a number of years ago, we had the CEO of Commonwealth speak, Justice Castaneda, and he gave us an overview. But I think we have so many new members, and there's so much going on that I'm excited to have the people who are doing the actual street work on.
Sharon.
So, oh boy, excuse me while I get rid of that. So I'm going to introduce you to Ashley. Ashley, tell me how you pronounce your last name.
Ashley Huff.
Okay, to Ashley, who is responsible for economic development and previously worked in the area of workforce development. That's near to my heart. And Carrie Ashton is responsible for the housing. Am I right, Carrie? For housing problems and issues. Yes.
So, but my last name is Alston, and I worked in housing with Commonwealth Development, but now I manage the adult workforce development section.
Oh, okay. I see how that works. I told you when I was meeting with you that I didn't have my glasses on when I took notes, so I was having a good time trying to translate my notes. Anyhow, welcome to Diversity in Madison. As you know, we've been meeting for, can you believe it, almost 10 years now. And we've learned a lot about a variety of neighborhoods in our community. But you have a unique view of Madison. And I'd like you to start by talking to us a little bit about yourselves and then about Commonwealth. So please begin.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start off. So my name is Carrie Alston, and I manage the adult workforce development section with Commonwealth Development. So primarily what I do is I work with the adults in our community in removing barriers to employment. Some of these barriers are perceived, such as the accumulation of experiences like discrimination, racism, sexism, domestic abuse, microaggressions, the expectation to outperform your white counterparts with little to no resources or training. And then there's also structural barriers that we're helping community members remove, like transportation, access to childcare, access to mental health resources, access to skills, vocational training, and additional resources and opportunities. I grew up in Madison. I went to the UW, a undergrad degree in geography with a concentration in people environmental interaction. So one of those kind of degrees which you can do nothing and everything with. But this is where I got my passion for community and populations. A lot of it was about how communities are impacted by the environment and how the environment impacts the community. This is why people on the East Coast and the West Coast are different. And even in Madison, this is why people from the North Side or the South Side are a little bit different. But even in that, though, the people on the North Side or like the Meadowwood community and Brentwood have more things in common than just a block away from those neighborhoods where the median income is significantly higher. And that's why it's really important for us to be able to know our population and recognize who our market is and who we're serving in the community. I used to do property management, like she had mentioned before. One of the things I really loved about doing that was providing homes and home opportunities to people. But during the pandemic, we were also evicting people. A lot of times those people were single Black women, head of households. At a time, I was really tired of doing that. I wanted to see what I could do about changing that, or to really find out why was it that minority single women households were struggling to maintain housing. And I was almost going to get out of housing because I just could not evict one more family. And then I came across Commonwealth, and their mission was a lot different. They really believed in providing a different solution to these issues, looking at it from all angles, and then providing those supports to people for them to be able to find retainable, meaningful employment, giving them the skills to actually retain that, and then helping people to improve the quality of life within their affordable housing and within their ability to be flexible with these families. And that's what brought me to Commonwealth Development.
And what a difference it's made in your life and all of the people that you
It
work
certainly
with.
has. It
Yeah.
certainly has.
And so Ashley, where did you go? Well, did we lose you, Ashley?
I am not seeing that Ashley is on. I hope
I
that she
don't-
will
I don't see
pop
her
back
on.
in very quickly.
Okay, well, let's continue, Carrie, with talking about workforce development. It's something, you know, I've been involved in through Just Dane, but I find it absolutely fascinating that Commonwealth Development uses workforce development to help define the neighborhoods that you work in. Could you give us an idea a little bit about how you work, talk about bringing people to the table, how you work in neighborhoods? And I remember when we talked, you talked about people that were housed in some of Commonwealth's buildings or properties, and how you all help them find employment. I find that, to me, that's one of the most fascinating pieces of what you do.
So I see Ashley is back, so maybe I should let her take it from here, or do you guys just want me to kind of just comment a little bit about workforce development and our role in the communities?
Why don't you do that? And then Ashley, you can jump on it. Did she disappear? Oh, there you are.
I'm
Okay.
here.
So
Sorry.
yeah. So again, Commonwealth really believes in this holistic approach to rejuvenating our communities. And through that, they believe that providing a strong workforce, healthy and affordable housing, and then opportunities for people were like these key elements to be able to give people an actually foot up and improve the quality of life. So through the adult workforce development, we will work with people in our housing that are struggling to pay their rent and helping them either develop the skills that they need to find jobs that are actually not only meaningful, because we all know that it's hard to go to work every day if you don't feel like there's some sort of value in what you're doing or that somebody values you in going. But also the skills and the means to navigate the many interplays of the workforce when you get into a new job, having to contest with office politics, preparing until you get your first paycheck, navigating professional settings in different areas and different sectors are different. And then the ability to really balance those out so that you have a good interplay or good balance between professional life and personal life. A lot of times people are always kind of struggling with these two aspects. And either if your job overplays in your life, your personal life overplays in your job, there's really no sustainability in that. So really giving people those skills to know how to navigate those things and cope with the stresses of life after work. Because after you've been off of work for a long time, you have to build up that new muscle memory to be able to, be in a routine, to plan ahead, to be able to deal with a household of kids and put a meal on the table at the end of a hard day. So a lot of those things are challenging, and we're trying to just help people, fit those pieces together.
See, Carrie, that's the part that just amazes me, because in some of the agencies in town that help to find housing and help to find jobs, they get somebody a job and they're done. All right. You stay with them, you work with them, you find the right kind of jobs that make it happen on an ongoing basis. And I guess this is a good segue for you, Ashley, to come in and give us some ideas about the total picture of Commonwealth.
Sure. Thank you for patience. Technology has not been my friend so far this week, so I'm on my phone now, so I can only see one person at a time. So if there's questions, please jump in. And just to recap, did we already do kind of a history of Commonwealth? Because I can back up a little bit and start there too.
Why don't you start there?
Sure.
Willie Street.
Yep, because I think that speaks to a little bit about why we operate the way that we operate today. But Commonwealth Development was founded in 1979 as a neighborhood intervention program. So back in the 70s, the Williamson Street neighborhood was experiencing a lot of violence, experiencing a lot of problematic behaviors in the area. And the neighbors came together to stop a development that was going to happen. It was going to be a bigger, like, I don't remember what the company was, but it was a fast food chain that was going to be coming in on Willie Street and developing part of it. So there was this investment that was about to happen. But the neighbors from around the neighborhood came together and said they didn't want their neighborhood to turn into that. So they came together and they formed a little bit of an arts music festival on Williamson Street. And they basically took back the streets, and this became an annual thing and eventually became a fundraiser. And that's what then Commonwealth was founded under. So that's how Commonwealth got its start. So that model of coming together and having community as a group is what we still operate under. So we believe, Commonwealth believes, that if you invest in the community and invest in relationships and getting to know people and spending time with those people, then you will ultimately be creating healthier, thriving communities across Madison. So our inception here in Williamson Marquette neighborhood is where a lot of our housing portfolio lives. It's where our primary office is housed. We operate in all of the high schools. So we've slowly spread now to be across Madison and Dane County. But I'll speak a little bit too about kind of where I came to Commonwealth from, and then I'll talk about each of our sections of work. So I'm from Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. That's where I was born and raised. I came here to Commonwealth in 2019. I did my undergrad and my master's program in social work with no intention of ever being a social worker necessarily, but I liked the values that came with the degree. I liked the way that the social work profession was structured, and through my degrees found my way to youth programs. So I accidentally kind of found my way facilitating programs for teenagers in Milwaukee during my graduate program. And so I came to Commonwealth facilitating our youth programs in the high schools. I supported East High School in particular when I was a youth employment specialist. I did that for a couple of years. I was a youth employment specialist for 2.5 years until about 2021. And then I was promoted to the manager of our youth programs. So overseeing all of our different internship programs, we have City of Madison internship programs, but we work with teenagers from 14 to 18, all the way through their high school career. So we have kind of preliminary programs that are like a student's first part-time job. They've never worked before, up to we have programs they've graduated high school and now they're talking about post-secondary ideas. And that's a really interesting and helpful snapshot, because our youth programs is structured the same way that Commonwealth is structured, and that we're going to walk with someone through the span of whatever it is they're walking through. So some youth programs, you see them for a year or one specific instance, and then you don't really get to walk with them through the rest of their trajectory in high school. But for Commonwealth, we have it as a spectrum. So we walk with them through all of those different phases of development and of their professional trajectory. So that's a little bit about youth programs. Carrie oversees our adult workforce development section that's housed primarily on the southwest side of Madison on the Raymond Road, where's our second kind of hub of housing portfolio on that southwest side. That's where our southwest office is as well. But Carrie's already kind of spoken about her work with the adult workforce section. The third section within economic development, I didn't even say what my current title is. I am the director of economic development. So I oversee our youth, adult, and business incubation is the third section that I was going to talk about. So we have 2 business incubation buildings here on the Isthmus. They're on Baldwin and on Main Street and Brearley. So they're 2 business incubator buildings for commercial real estate. Small businesses getting off the ground, having affordable rent here on the Isthmus is very challenging for small businesses to get off the ground in a supportive and healthy way. So we have 2 buildings that we manage and provide affordable commercial space for them to get their small businesses off the ground. MEC, Madison Enterprise Center, is run in partnership with MG&E, and that is for a first stage incubator. So it's about a year up to 5 years that we have businesses there who are getting their feet under them, getting their business plan refined, getting their market refined, really just starting out. And then MSI, or Main Street Industries, is our second stage incubator. So often we see graduates from one move up to the second one. So the first stage is smaller, smaller like art style suites. And then the second one, they're a little bit bigger and they're longer leases. So allowing for more long-term growth up to 25 years that a business could be at MSI. So those are the 3 economic development sections. And of those 3, you can really get a picture for, we're talking about training the workforce, and we're also talking about building the economy that workforce could then work within. In theory, that's the concept, is that we're providing Madison with diverse small businesses building up our own economy here, and we have a workforce that's trained to work in that economy in an effective way, all with supportive mentorship, with supportive people in their corner offering resources, problem solving issues, as compared to a standard kind of commercial real estate person may say, well, you've been in violation of your lease, or you're this and that, and can't continue in the space. So those are the economic development sections that I oversee. We also have the housing piece. So we have safe, affordable housing throughout Madison. Our model at Commonwealth is if you provide safe and healthy housing, if you have a job that is supportive and you make a living wage and you've got the skills that you need, and you have the ability to have your own entrepreneurship, you have the ability to invest your own income back into the economy that is supporting all of this, then you're creating this synergy and thriving communities of keeping that all robustly building into each other.
So Ashley, one of the things that I find interesting, most interesting about Commonwealth, as you look at different neighborhoods and development, is that you take a long view. You don't come in and do something. You meet with people. You create a community first, and that absolutely fascinates me. How is all of this supported? Where does the money come from to buy the properties? Where does the money come from to support these entrepreneurs? How does it work?
Sure. So what you kind of touched on too is our real estate development efforts. So Commonwealth is also a real estate development company. So part of what we do, it's a little bit more of a quiet way that we're working, not so loudly, I guess, in a way, or not so overtly, is we're building relationships with people in neighborhoods throughout Madison over many years, so that we have this kind of trusting bond and relationship in the event that we could ever be a support for them down the road. But Commonwealth's housing and incubation income from rent comes back into funding youth programs, funding our ability to be supportive in other ways. So we're very much self-sustaining in that we can support based on our own income, our programs that we're operating. We do receive some grant funding from the city, from the county, and from some other smaller foundations and partners that provide support for our work. But in general, the majority of our funding is all housed internally in our own operations, which allows us to be very autonomous and independent from what can sometimes be. You never know if the city is going to have less money to offer youth programs across Madison, or if a lot of different youth serving organizations, for example, are going for the same amount of money within the grant pool. That can become very contentious, or you can't bank on that. You can't guarantee that that's going to be there 4 years from now necessarily, depending on how they're investing in different things. So that does allow us some flexibility and some freedom to not be so beholden to some of those more tumultuous grant cycles.
And that's the thing that amazed me, was not only the long view and the development of a community around what you do, but the fact that something that has bugged me, and we've talked about this before in diversity, is that it seems that all of the, I call them helping agencies in Madison, contend for the same dollars. And when I talked with you, I was just blown away by the fact that you work with them. You do what I've always wondered, why it doesn't happen. You work with the Boys and Girls Club. You work with all of the different, with United Way. You bring everybody to the table, and then this is how you are able to find housing and to find jobs. And Carrie, finding jobs for people is incredible, and you work with the agencies that help that. I just talk about that a little bit when you talk about bringing everybody to the table over a long period of time. How do you sustain that? How does it work?
Yeah. I can speak to a couple different examples. So we have the Youth Employment Network is a good example of a network that I chair right now. I chair the steering committee, but they are a collective of youth serving organizations throughout Madison. So that includes Goodman Community Center, Boys and Girls Club, Briar Patch Youth Services, Operation Fresh Start, Centro Hispano, Madam. I mean, a lot of us, right? We all, though, come to that table in an effort to share resources, to receive training, to talk about how we're doing serving youth in Madison, or any kind of shared issues that we're navigating. And I think it's also to acknowledge the work that we're all doing. I mean, each of us have our own niche, and we've all been doing our niche for a given amount of time. And I think there's an ability to lean on each other and share what's worked for each other or collaborate on different issues. So we meet monthly to talk about what's going on, to connect with the city, with the school district, and all be in the same room and just have community together. Because ultimately, whether we're talking about youth support or we're talking about housing, no one organization is going to solve everything on their own. No one has the resources, the capacity. It's just they're too large of issues to do singularly. And I think we're stronger, again, speaking to the mission of Commonwealth as a community, in that if we lean on each other, if we share those collaborative resources and have respect for the fact that we're all trying for the same goal of supporting young people or supporting the community, we're better off. And we're going to make a little bit more progress probably, right, if we're working collaboratively on those efforts together.
So I begin to get the understanding of the incredible interlacing, if you will, of where Commonwealth is in our community. I look at some neighborhoods and I see all of these apartment buildings going up, and they stand alone as I think about that. Whereas the properties that you invest in are geared toward the community, and it's around those properties that you build all of these supports. And Carrie, I was fascinated by the way you talk about finding jobs for people, but staying with them. And it reflects just what you're talking about, Ashley, the long-term relationships that sustain Commonwealth. I was under the impression that you were like Delancey Street in San Francisco. You owned a building, you had people that rented it, but you employed them there within the building. Yours is so far more, you're so broader in your approach. And I hear you talking about making things last for a long time, not just, building a building and renting it out. So talk a little bit more, if you would, Carrie, about the workforce development. And Ashley, you talked about people in your youth programs moving up into jobs that you found, Carrie. That's wild.
So yeah, so again, adult workforce development really believes in this idea that, the hard work isn't just getting the job. The hard work really comes in maintaining that job, and not everybody has that longevity or that experience to understand the importance of professionalism, interpersonal skills, communication, recognizing your audience, being able to cope is a huge thing. A lot of the people in this community are living paycheck to paycheck. Not planning ahead for your first paycheck when you're starting a job is really the difference between keeping the job and finding yourself a week down the road with not enough money to take the bus in, not enough money to actually have a meal on the table when you get home, and really could be the difference between somebody actually keeping the job or losing. And then once those things start to accumulate in somebody's life, the more likely it is that they can't keep a job long term. So again, really just to make sure that the people in this community are building those healthy routines and those healthy interpersonal skills. We really actually sit down with them. We put them in a classroom if needed, or we do this one-on-one, and we teach them what communication is once again, and we help them also then realign with themselves and building that degraded self of dignity, so over the time that this happens to somebody, you lose the confidence in yourself to be able to say, hey, I can actually do this. I can actually achieve a goal. And you wouldn't believe the number of people that come in here and are absolutely jaded, that really don't believe that could even get a $10 an hour job. So, really just sitting down with the community and understanding who we're dealing with, who our market is really what really makes it or breaks it in this program.
And so some of the people that you actually find jobs for, people that have come up through Commonwealth's youth programs. See, that's the thing that excites me so much, is that when you talk about Commonwealth and you talk about these, I'm going to call them hot spots that you work in, you do it all. I mean, you work with the kids and you're very involved in that. You work with the kids, you help them do just what you're talking about, have confidence in the fact that they belong in the community and contribute to the community. It's it's just something so new. I've never experienced it in any of the work that I've done, and I I just can't get over it. So tell us more, if you would, Ashley, about what actually happens in your work with your youth groups. I mean,
Sure.
what do you do? And
Sure.
how do they decide to become part of your group?
Yeah. Well, I think how we structure all of our programs are volunteer. No student, no individual is mandated to any of our workforce programming. And I think that's really like a core tenet of how we operate as a company. We allow the community to be the steward of what is going to happen. They inform how our programs operate, whether that be in an immediate sense, we're making adjustments, or like over the long term, but they are the drivers of their experience. And we are here to hear them and have space with them and build relationships with them. Our youth programs starts out with Youth Business Mentoring Program. It's a 2-week pre-employment training program housed at the schools. So we're at all 4 main Madison high schools. And then we do community-based sessions over the summer when school's not in session. The topics for those programs are really baseline foundational workforce programming around like financial literacy skills, interviewing skills, resumes, cover letters, communication skills, your rights at work. Many young people heading into work don't understand that they have protections around when they can work, how many hours they can work, what to do if they feel like they're a 14-year-old in their first job and they're working a later evening shift by themselves. Like, how can they access feeling empowered at work? All of our programs also come with mentorship. So those young people, be them 14 at their first job or 18 in an internship, they will have an adult, trusted, supportive mentor who is a Commonwealth staff member who will walk with them through troubleshooting issues or problem solving, how to change a schedule, or just kind of some of those new things that not necessarily everybody gets taught at home. So that's our first program. Our second stage program is called the Wanda Fulmar Youth Internship Program. It's a City of Madison internship program in partnership with the City of Madison, where students work department placements over the summer. They work with us and with the City of Madison, different divisions like Parks Division, the public libraries, the City Attorney's Office. Information Technology has been a department, building inspection. So it really varies year to year, but basically the departments host an intern for the summer, and the students get to work in what feels a little bit more like an office setting or a little bit more of a career style placement where they get to learn about what's happening at the city. The program is 9 weeks over the summer, and it teaches them a little bit more about post-secondary plans, scholarships, grants, about the public processes around urban development. So they also work on a project throughout the summer, and then they present it at the end of the summer to alders and to community leaders around the way that they recommend a real City of Madison development project be carried forward from their perspective as youth who have grown up in Madison. Ultimately, that's the entire point of our programs, right? Is we are training the future leaders of Madison. And so we need to invest in them having the skills and having a livable wage and having supportive mentorship and management who are helping them kind of go through the high school process. After that summer internship program, we have the Youth Advisory Board. So that is a program for 16 Madison leaders from across the different high schools to engage with different community leaders. So this semester, they're talking about immigration. They're meeting with attorneys. They're meeting with advocates from the community who are supporting families navigating immigration. They're meeting with people from the county about it. And then they ultimately kind of lend their voices to how they see those really big picture issues, policy recommendations, connecting with other leaders around what they would recommend from their perspective, and just kind of grasping that theoretical and bigger picture learning. So those are those are our 3 primary programs within youth workforce. The last one that kind of joins youth workforce to adult workforce is called ELA. It's the Experiential Learning and Leadership Academy. It's a newer program that we have, but what it does is it allows us to, at Commonwealth, employ students who are graduating from high school as adults, be that immediately after high school, so that they can have a semester to kind of bridge before they head into maybe undergrad, or if they're navigating what their next step is. Not all 18-year-olds know if they're heading to post-secondary education yet or don't know what they want to do. So it allows for some supportive employment right after high school. Within that program, we also hire TAs from the Madison Urban, I'm going to say the name wrong, Madison School of Urban Planning and Design. So basically those TAs, we hire them to be TAs for the Wanda Fulmore program to guide the students learning around the specific land design project that they do. So it allows us to hire young adults who are either in immediately after high school space, if they are in their undergraduate space, or if in their master's space, and they work within our sections and facilitate the programs that in theory they probably just graduated from, or that they are pretty adjacent to and they're learning and can then lend their experience back to the teens who are currently in that program.
All I can say is, wow. I hear you talking about what the future of our city looks like. I mean, the kids that work with you and go through the programs all become the business owners, the real estate developers, the bankers, the loan people. I mean, you're talking about where Madison is going. And not only that, you model Commonwealth development models exactly what you're talking about, so that these youngsters see it all the way through. I know a lot of you work with groups of children, and I'm amazed to think that people from Briar Patch, people from Goodman, who are in different programs, get to participate in what you're doing. And I think the thing that pleases me, and surely all of us most, is that this starts with relationships, that you build the relationships. And I think that kids that go through the programs and become adults and serve in these programs all know each other and have worked together before. I know this isn't a new idea, but I think it's a new idea for developing a community. So tell us more, if you will, about some of the other programs that Commonwealth supports.
Within our own programming?
Yes.
Sure.
Broader.
So I would say that's a really robust picture of youth workforce. There are some other small things that kind of are complements to those core programs where we help students earn elective school credit for the work that they do in our programs, or like more specific tailored workshops. Other than that, that's a really robust picture of the youth workforce section. Within adult workforce, we operate a couple different programs that are specific to either partner staff or our pilot programs that we're trying ourselves. So we have FSET, which is the county supported program that Carrie facilitates. So that I can let Carrie talk about that in more detail, or about any of these specific pieces. We also have STEP, so that's a transitional employment program. And then we have Workup Academy. So they're all kind of intrinsically aligned, but I'm going to let Carrie talk more elaborately about each of these, but around the same thinking as youth workforce, trying to build out a little bit of a continuum or a spectrum that allows a community member, if they interact with us at a drop-in center, or if they meet one of us at an event, that we have something to offer them. We can't be the answer for everybody, but that we have some entry point for anybody who would engage with our programming or with our staff. I don't know if Carrie, you want to elaborate on the adult workforce programs more specifically.
Sure. So there are a few different programs that we offer, but anybody who is 18 and up can come to us. The few programs that we have is FSET, which is the Food Share Employment, Transitional Employment and Training. That's where we partner with the county. Anybody that is receiving food share benefits either has a work requirement or a work search requirement to obtain those benefits. And so it was thought as if there was going to be a work requirement that we had to provide resources to people so that they could find jobs that they could keep. And through that, we partnered with a number of different agencies in the Madison area. So like Urban League, YWCA, WRTP, Big Step, and then Just Gain. And in a lot of ways, these agencies offer it in for a lot of the adult workforce. So some of the programs that can be offered through them are like basic computer skills, administrative assistance, healthcare administration, web design, carpentry, apprenticeships, office essentials, some of the smaller classes, basic Word, basic Excel. And then we also have our Workup Academy. The Workup Academy is something that we just do with Commonwealth Development for right now. It's a 7-week course in which we are helping people develop soft skills. So again, communication, professionalism, conflict resolution, how do you build out a resume, how do you interview, how do you demystify some of the more common questions that are asked in the interview, and then how you actually get the job, like making sure that your resume stands out, making sure that you're following up with people, and then making sure that you are building your own sort of network. You know, the more time people see you at employment events, out in these communities, the more your face is seen. And even sometimes these agencies like the Urban League or the YWCA will reach out to our participants and offer jobs. Another program that we offer is our Job Shop, which happens every Wednesday. It's over here at the Meadowwood Community Neighborhood Center. This is a drop-in program where anybody can come in and get the resume help from UW Writing Lab. Joining Forces for Families is in that space to help people with navigating government benefits like Social Security or getting on the CDA waiting list for Section 8. We also have RISE and Early Childhood Initiative in that space. We have Clean Slate, which is a medicated assisted recovery service. And then from time to time, the county is there as well, helping people sign up for like food share benefits. And then the last thing is the STEP program. The STEP program happens after Workup. Because once we see people have those basic interpersonal skills like communications, then we will petition an employer to allow somebody to come in and work and get relevant work experience. And then we will pay for up to 100 hours of their training. So we will cover their wages for the participant to get the training so they can get their foot in the door. And then anything else is just really one-on-one with me.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's really incredible. And then there's another part of Commonwealth that kind of is the umbrella for all of this. You mentioned the Meadowwood neighborhood. When I was talking to Justice, he mentioned Milwaukee Street, you know, these blue collar communities that big development companies are looking at with greed in their eyes about developing apartment buildings and moving people out, changing what we call gentrification. And that isn't how you work. You, for example, in the Meadowwood neighborhood, you work with the community center there, you own real estate there, and you take a long view for developing the neighborhood without changing it. And so, Ashley, would you talk a little bit about that as well? Milwaukee Street, for example, there's no food, you know, there's no supermarkets over there. There's, it's just going to fall into, you know, sad disrepair at some point in time. Talk about what's going on over there, if you would.
Sure. And this kind of speaks to our real estate development efforts too. So when we're looking at different communities throughout Madison, and we're hearing about or reading about, or it's kind of well known that there are not resources there, and you're seeing these symptoms arise of people are meeting their needs other ways, that's an indication that people don't have what they need. And that's exactly how Commonwealth was founded. And I think the way that we operate in hearing from the community and letting the community drive how their community is developed is part of the point, right? So we get to know them, we build relationships with them, we are in the neighborhood meetings or are involved in some of those planning decisions. One of the projects that the youth internship program this past summer focused on was a Milwaukee Street development project, because the city is looking at what they're going to do with some of the city-owned land in that area. And so how could the youth of Madison who live in that neighborhood inform what that development would look like in 10, 15, however many years that project would happen, but at least they've had the opportunity to weigh in, right, on the development of their city. But that's kind of the point around the way that we do our work, is that we are slowly building those relationships over time. But in the event that we get to that point of 10 years down the road, that we now have the resources or the city is willing to invest in that development, and we're well equipped to understand how the community identifies their needs, then we're at the table to be prepared to purchase property or to invest in property so that the community can be, the strengths that already are in a community can be retained and not demolished and built something up because a developer came in and said what they thought that that community needed. A lot of it is about preserving what already exists as really wonderful strengths within a community, acknowledging that and being at the table for that relationship building, and then allowing that to continue in our investment or in our seat at the table of decision making or whatever that looks like that Commonwealth can be a part of. And Milwaukee Street's an example of that.
And when you talk at a seat at the table, it's how do you bring community members together? I mean, how does that actually happen? I love all the ideas and I know it works, but how does it start? I
Well, I
know,
think it's,
you know,
sorry, go ahead.
you're building over on Raymond Road. You have some offices there. And I know that you have other services that operate out of that building. But how do you bring people together? How does that start?
Mhm.
Is it through the churches or the community centers? Where does it start?
I think it can be. No one, that's the unique thing about Madison, or I guess in cities in general, but like no one neighborhood is the same as the next, right? But I think sometimes we presume that like what one neighborhood is going to be supported by is going to support another. And that could be correct. But in general, you're not going to know until you get to know that specific neighborhood and what they need and how they feel best supported. I think as far as how you bring people to the table, part of the way that we operate at Commonwealth that I can speak to is we make a habit of maintaining relationships with people who are supporting Madison at a scale that we are and who are supporting the different pockets. So whether it be a youth serving organization who focuses very specifically on a given neighborhood, and therefore there's someone we should retain contact with and be really deliberate with, so that we already have the relationship that we can already be at the table in the event that something happens or in the event that they need support or we need support. We're already there. I think it's about genuinely building relationships with people across Madison who have aligned missions and values and supporting each other's work wherever we can. Sometimes it is going to the already present resources around churches or community centers or hubs for the way the community is already accessing community within themselves, and being a presence in that space. That's another example for that would be like Arbor Hills, the church on McDivitt Road. We started connecting with that neighborhood more deliberately at the neighborhood team meetings, I think back in 2017, 2018. Just being in the space, being involved in the community, being involved in the South Madison neighborhood, what was going on, just to be in the room and build those relationships around what we heard was happening there. And so over time, building that solid connection and then being in the position of being at the table when we were able to step in and purchase the church on McDivitt and leave it as a church and a daycare so that they can continue to be operating out of that space. Again, not kind of reducing the strength that was already there, just allowing the strength to continue because that's what the community said that they needed and they should be the drivers of that.
Wow. I hear you talk about this and it excites me so much. I wish I were a kid that could participate, or I wish I could get a job at Commonwealth. So you've answered a lot of my questions. Anybody that's on this morning have any questions that you'd like to ask?
I do. I'm Sue Simon, and I don't know why my picture isn't up today, but I've been here all the time and I'm fascinated too. I was a high school teacher that ran a companion program called Hero Home Ec Related Occupations. And in the spring, when the kids signed up, I would get their list of what jobs they wanted in either childcare, health, or foods. And then for the summer, I'd call employers and get them positions that they could get credit for during the school year. Are you aware of these programs in the high schools where you are now going on? Are they still going on? Hero and
Yeah.
FBLA?
Sure. So that sounds similar to our youth business mentoring program structurally and just the way that we approach it. We train students across the Madison School District in those foundational skills that I mentioned earlier. And then once they've done that 2-week training, we allow them to pick so they kind of come to that program with ideas about where they hope to work. And then we do kind of a placement style structure with that. Once they're working, we get them school credit for the job hours that they're working. So kind of aligning all of that together, similarly to what you outlined. And I know a lot of the other youth serving organizations have a similar structure in that they do skill development at the front end, they do a job placement, be that internally at their organization or job placement the way that we contemplate it, and then they get school credit for that. I know Goodman structures it that way. Briar Patch does the summer program that way. And they all kind of earn school credit, and they earn the Department of Public Instruction's employability skills certificate alongside that as well.
Well, I've
So
been
these
out of it enough years that I don't know if it's still ongoing, and it's making me interested enough to start investigating that, because I don't remember hearing Commonwealth at Memorial where I taught all the years. I left there in 2006. Would you have been there by then?
That would have been a close one. So that program that I'm referencing right now, YBMP is the acronym for it, started at East in 91 or 93. The picture behind me is actually one of our first cohorts from an East group that we used to facilitate here in our office. So 91 or so, it's been operating about 30 years, but it very slowly spread to the other schools. So I could look back around when we ended up at Memorial, but I would imagine it's maybe we were just on the tail end of when you kind of left Memorial.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Well, thank you. And then my other question is, I'm in the northeastern section of Madison, and I have been just excited about the development of the feed kitchen. Do you have any relationship to the feed kitchen that is a commercial kitchens that it's an incubator for small businesses, and majorly the ones that are around in the food carts, the kiosks, and grown and grown and grown. And I've toured them, and I'm so excited. Are you interface with them at all, or is that a standalone?
They operate as a standalone, but we have very close connections and relationships with both the people who run that building and who operate out of the building. One thing I think is pretty well known about small businesses is no one size fits all. So sometimes that's another area of collaboration where we have commercial space that is very like blank slate. So you could come in, and just as an example for our MSI building, in one little hub of 4 suites, we've got scientific, I couldn't even pronounce the name. They do like molecular biology kind of instrument crafting, just wildly fascinating stuff. Across the hall is they make cat toys. Next to them is they do painting portraits. And next to them is screen printing t-shirts. So we also have kitchens in that space and all these other different incubation buildings, but how each entrepreneur sees their business best thriving or what they need from a space varies. So sometimes we're at the table with these other spaces that are operating similarly. Theirs is primarily a kitchen space. But how could we be a collaborative space in lending resources or sharing what's working for them or what's working for us? We have really solid connections that we lean on there. Yes.
Good. Yeah.
Nancy
Exciting.
Thunder has a question.
You wanted to know how they measure success, Nancy, is that right?
Yes.
How we measure success.
Yeah. How do you evaluate yourselves in these many different arenas, I guess.
Yeah. Sure. And I would say those metrics, depending on which arena we're talking about, are going to vary. It depends also if we have grant funding that's tied to it. But in general, success to us, does that individual report that they are feeling supported? Do they feel that they are being heard in what they've come to our program for? Are they still housed a year later? Are they feeling supported and safe in their housing, for example? For youth workforce, have they, from the point of entry at their program to the point of exit, did they leave with the skills or the confidence or the relationship with their mentor that they hoped to exit with? Do they have solid action steps for after, depending on where in their development they are? For an 18-year-old, that may look like I've been accepted to post-secondary, or I've got a job lined up for after high school, or I'm approved for an apartment. It varies so widely with the young people, what they're hoping for, but we do have specific metrics for like each individual program that we measure and then report on internally and externally. For adult workforce, they're similar to the youth workforce, where we're having a pre and a post, or did they leave with those skills? Do they still have employment after a certain amount of time to make sure that that's sustainable employment for them? For business incubation, some of the metrics there are similar in that, do those businesses feel supported in their specific niche? Do they have access to resources? Are we making connections to grants or different funding opportunities that would help that business be sustainable? In general, we don't see a lot of turnover at the business incubators, especially at the second stage. We do see a lot of graduation, which is part of the point. So we kind of keep an eye on, are we creating a culture across both buildings that allows for a business to slowly grow and scale in a healthy way that doesn't put an extra strain on that business as they're scaling up, because sometimes that's very hard to find that middle ground for those entrepreneurs for what's too much growth or not enough growth. Those are some immediate things that come to mind. So we do some reporting, we have specific metrics, but a lot of it is driven by how that individual comes to the space and how they define success.
Thank you. Other questions? I have one more question. I have lots of questions. I envision all of your staff coming together around, what is it, once a month maybe, while you talk about all of your programs, what you're doing and the success and the interrelationships that are developed between the programs. You know, Carrie, when I hear you talk about following through with people who have been employed through the contacts that you have. And I think that they may have come up through the program that you've talked about, Ashley. The whole concept, as it crosses various communities within Madison, I find absolutely fascinating and very exciting. Anybody else want to comment on this? Okay.
Well, I'll just comment. I'm just so impressed because some of my experience in Madison is that a lot of organizations are in silos. So
Yes.
the notion of working together to solve problems is really fantastic. And I commend you for doing that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. That's always been a bugaboo for me that these resources aren't shared. I think you all may remember when Letitia Nelson, who's the CEO over at Goodman, spoke. She said, "We have so much to offer at Goodman. We have so many different programs, and other community centers don't take advantage of trading back and forth. And you at Commonwealth, I mean, that's how you work. There's no question about the fact that you wouldn't work with the Road Home, with Porchlight, with all of the different community helping agencies in Madison. I see people like Sabrina Madison and her training of young Black entrepreneurs in finances, in business success. Is just exactly what you all are doing, but not all on your own. You're utilizing everything that is available across Madison. So I have to thank you so much. I know that we've only touched on the surface of all of these things. And if any of our people who are on today or who are watching this on YouTube have questions, they find you online on your website. And are you open to having people contact you personally?
Of course. Yeah. I'm happy to follow. You have my email. You're welcome to share that with your group. And if any questions kind of come up after the fact, or you see something later and it prompts a thought back to this, I'm more than happy to talk more or revisit the conversation.
That's great. Thank you both so much. Carrie, thank you for arranging this in the beginning. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Okay. Thank you all. See you next month.
And thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Thank
This
you.
was delightful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Yep. Mhm.
Wow, Nancy, I was watching the expression on your face throughout. I saw you thinking